All right, everyone. Thank you. I'm John Snelling, Associate Vice President, Institutional Effectiveness here at Australia Mountain. And of course, Jim Long, our very capable senior analyst. And so welcome everyone, either in person or online, for coming out today and joining us. Jim's got some incredible information and demonstrations to share with you. You know, here at Australia, we're really working hard on one of our goals to really, increase a culture of assessment of learning, culture of learning here at the institution. And one mechanism in which we're working through that is, embedding outcomes from our classes, whether it's program level, class level, institutional level, into one system, our Canvas system, to help us understand and see what's happening with student learning and assessment of that learning here at Australia. And so I'm really excited that Jim had poured so much into putting today's presentation together for you. I know it's a lot of different blocks, but he's also built in a lot of engaging and informing questions for you to consider and think about at your institutions. And I hope today you'll have a great experience. You'll get a little technical on some, but that's what most of you came for, to get the ins and outs of exactly how we are managing to integrate Canvas along with our data visualization tools of Tableau to bring various visualizations and understanding of our student learning. So thank you very much. Unfortunately, I need to step out for a little bit. I have a senior leadership meeting I need to be to for the next hour or so, but I will make my way back here to join you guys throughout the day. So thank you very much again, in person and online, for making the trek out to Australia. We much appreciate it. Jim, will turn over to Jim now, and he'll tell you the logistics for those in the room and online. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And enjoy the meeting, John. I'll be back. For those of you all online, this probably doesn't matter a whole lot. However, want to make sure, if you're not familiar with this building, if you want to get a soda or restrooms, you go out the double doors, take a left, then take a right, you're coming back. It works that way. If you get hungry, and I suspect you will, too many mice. Restroom break, it's across from the soda machine. Lunch on campus. Personal bias. We have something called Market Days, which is kind of a cultural immersion where it's like folks from our community, they kind of match our demographic, have booze. They're selling stuff. The food trucks have been phenomenal in the past. So, street tacos, that's where it's at. So keep that in mind. If not, there's the grill where they have standard grill fare. And if you want to just go all uptown across the street, is Zeta's Grill. Mediterranean food, very good, relatively quick. Not super cheap, but not too bad. So food for thought. Coffee? That's a great point. Maybe during the break we do a field trip, because I could definitely use a new cup as well. And for y'all at home, go to the microwave. The agenda today is pretty packed. Good morning. We're going to talk a little bit in blocks. 4 kinds of ways we broke this up. The first block wanted to focus on how we got here, where we were, where we are now, and where we want to go. And to kind of give you a realization of, we're just about where a lot of y'all, we have been where you've been. And we've learned a whole lot of how not to do things, which is a great way of learning. It's frustrating, but we've gone through a lot of learning curves. But the solutions for us may or may not be perfect for you, but at least it's a consideration. Block 2, I want to talk about Canvas setup. The cornerstone to this tool is setting up Canvas in a certain way, so that when you load outcomes or load courses, which are not in SIS, you can automate the process. Because the way we have it now, most learning outcomes that come into Canvas now, I don't have to touch. They automatically get dashboarded the day after learning outcomes have been graded. It's really, really handy. And it only took about 7 years. Your learning curve will be much quicker. Here we take about an hour for lunch. That's why I recommend maybe considering that market days because it's close by. In the afternoon, this is for the propeller heads like me who love the data and the details. We're going to talk about two different tools within Tableau, working with two different data sources, SIS and Canvas. How they can talk together, how we can join them, how we can use Tableau prep, because some people in the room are absolute whiz kids when it comes to SQL. Some people should not be allowed to butter bread in a public setting when it comes to SQL. That is me. Tableau prep gives me a lot of the same functionality with a lot less heavy lifting. It's more intuitive. And it's been designed so that a whole lot of that is going to be pretty easy with a few college edits so that it'll work for you as well. So a lot of the heavy lifting will be reduced once it's set up. So we'll talk about prep, loading it in so that it's an automatically refreshed data source overnight, and then creating a new dashboard or copying one over, which will be hitting that data set and updating daily. And then finally, the tail end of the day, kind of a capstone of here's where it's at, here's where we got here. Does this sound like a fit? And if it's something you want to pursue, these are some steps you might want to consider doing. The key thing I want to talk about this though is it's not just an individual college. It really does take a village. This was a process that involved faculty. Obviously, assessment is a faculty-driven entity. It involved administration supporting the craziness of this rabbit hole we went down. It involved CTL, where we modified and improved the way that we load Canvas data into Canvas. It involved IR, where this foolish person chose the endeavor of continually finding ways to automate the process. HLC liaisons, it involved them because this provides great fodder documentation to support your accreditation journey. It involves a lot IT support. It involves a lot of different entities with different degrees of intensity. Online, are you hearing us?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, first of all, assessing learning outcomes, how did we get here? I want to go real basic because I never want to make assumptions. What is assessment? Assessment is simply deciding what we want our students to learn and making sure they learn it. It's very basic, it's very fundamental, and it's very essential because in this environment in particular, in the last year, being able to justify our existence is becoming more and more important. Assessing is identifying two key things. Are students learning? And how do we know? And my wife, as a medical social worker, drove this into me many years ago. That is, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So we've got to have documentation, not just for HLC. That's an afterthought. It's because it's the right thing to do. That's where we're trying to head with this. Now, at Estrella, current practices that we work with, assessing learning outcomes at an institutional level, you're going to get tired of hearing ILO. That stands for Institutional Learning Outcome. At a program level, or PLO. Class learning outcomes, or course, I use those interchangeably, for CLOs, co-curricular, extracurricular, and even employee development. One thing to mention that's kind of cool and a newer development for Estrella is if courses are loaded into Canvas, like CTL workshops, student affairs workshops, etc., it is possible to use the same tool to be able to dashboard those results. Another key thing going on right now is the documentation of assessment learnings. This is the data. This is the baseline kind of data of where you're starting, what's going on. We have developed a tool over the years we call CATS, which is an assessment tracking system, which gives you the ability to document, here's where we were, Here's what we did. Here was the outcome. Here's what we learned, and here's what we might do next. Can be saved as a PDF file. That is superb documentation for HLC. And it's just really great to be able to scale out and make it so that more folks can access what you're working on and where you're going with it. And finally, a lot of assessment of outcomes, things like assessing null levels, et cetera, but that's outside the scope of today. Benefits of assessment, answers to the questions I just asked. Identification of learning outcome gaps that may require pedagogy adjustments. If I've been teaching the same class the same way for 17 years, not that that ever happens in Maricopa, but if I'm doing it the same way, do I know, are my students getting it? Is one group getting it better or worse than another group? Is there a difference between dual and non-dual? The system can potentially deal with that. Is there a difference between old guys like me and the young Turks? There are a lot of different opportunities and challenges that you can identify and trying to keep it simple to be able to see those gaps. Now, if I put in a change, if I've been teaching it the same way for 17 years, but this semester I get inspired and I'm going to make some change. If I change how I am teaching that section, this will give you data to be able to see, were the learning outcomes consistent? Was there an increase in the percentage of mastery, or did people get worse? Give me some information of knowing, did it make a difference? And I'm going to use the term mastery throughout today. Mastery is simply looking at how many times something was assessed and looking at, per the rubric that I created, or you created in your class when you put it into Canvas, you identify the point level, which if they score a 2 or higher, that means you've mastered this concept. That works extremely well of just taking the sum of the ones and zeros of mastery, non-mastery, the sum divided by the count. Why? Because some folks have 3-point scales. One course is a 20-point scale. How do I compare those? How do I dashboard? Using mastery simplified that so that it could create a bridge to be able to compare the data across each other. Now, finally, if our students are mastering the concept, they're going to be better prepared to make a difference in the community. And really, when it comes down to it, that's what really matters, is are we preparing students? With the possibility of also increasing fluency, because if students get the core concepts, if they're not getting it, well, they're still in the course. They took a pre-test, they're clueless on a concept. If I teach to that concept and really improve their learning, I've got a higher likelihood they're going to complete that course and be successful. And if they're successful in this course, they're more likely to be prepared for the next one. They're more likely to enroll and more likely to be successful. And if they're taking sequential courses in a program, they're much more likely to graduate. All of those things feed into footsy. So if we want to increase revenue for this district, learning outcomes is a great way of doing that. And I don't think it's ever really been pushed that way, but it has a bottom line impact. Gosh, greetings, folks. Come on in. Oh, I know. Yeah, I was watching the news and cringing.
Oh, is it on the news?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my wife, that was
What happened?
fatalities, and they're like 4 accidents.
Oh, no, it was over an hour
Yeah.
and 15 minutes on the freeway, so.
I guess I was glad that I people routed me side streets and I did like an entire way, like all hour of my driving, but apparently that was a good thing.
Well, it was so bad, we were illegally getting off the freeways, like going through the barrack, like the gates, like there was an opening in the gates. And I have pictures, we're literally all getting off and off the freeway through the gates. And I'm like, please don't let my car tip over, because we're at a gate like that. So I'm like, okay, sorry.
For those of y'all at home, feel lucky.
Yeah.
I live 4 miles from here, so it's like,
We're lucky to be
Yeah.
here, Chip.
I'm very glad that y'all are, and y'all are online as well. Matt's dealing with that.
Okay.
I'll get that covered. 1 minute break in content. If you need refreshments, bathroom break, take a left outside the double doors, take another left. Lunch, food market days today, so street trucks with really good street tacos. Highly recommend it. Some other places if you have concerns on that. We kind of just dove into the first model, talking a little bit about where we are. Now at Estrella, we have various levels of assessment. Institutional. Think of institutional as kind of being, regardless of the program they're in, this is a life skill I want folks to master. Where we take a look at three, that I kind of split one into two parts. Program learning outcomes. At the completion of my program, are you mastering the key concepts to be successful in your field? Course learning outcomes, am I mastering the concepts to be prepared for the subsequent course in my program? Then we have some crazy ones like co-curricular and extracurricular and employee development. So that maybe it's something that's like a co-curricular, it's like a new student orientation. The system can handle it. Najma teaches a really cool course that is more so for employees.
MPG, yeah, it's our optimizing campus.
So we have a lot of different ways of being able to get it into the same system so that it gives an easy way for folks to be able to see how we're doing with assessment. Two types of assessment, one more basic. Some of y'all could probably teach me a lot about this. Formative and summative. Summative is what we think of more often. It's kind of after the fact, take a look back and see how did we do in summation. Formative, I'm a real strong proponent for with pre and post testing. Because the question I have always had in my background is certified quality manager. I come from a TQM background, if that means anything to those who have more decades than others. With a pre and post, the question I always love that they can answer is, did they come into my classroom already knowing the content? Some courses, it's like I chuckle. Say I 1 to 5, it's a great class. But some people in that class don't know how to cut, copy, and paste into those. Other folks could probably teach it. They're getting these life skills in elementary school now. So it's one of those challenges. And a formative assessment at the beginning of the term gives me the ability to see, do they already have the skills? And if they don't and they show improvement, that is a great thing to showcase. And we recommend folks enter a CATS to document that success. So taking a look at this all, now we'll get interactive in just a minute. I'm talking way too much. Ideally, we want to be able to deal with a lot of core issues. Taking a look at the rigor and the quality of our programs. Is it consistent across modality or instructional mode? Location, is it the same at, regardless of where it's taught, particularly the campuses where they have multiple sites. And other differentiating facts like demographics, day, evening courses, etc. This should look pretty familiar because this is an HLC model of assessing a program at the and course level. Improving your curriculum based on program review. And yes, this has a great fodder for the core elements of program review. And it gives you a great opportunity to take a look at who you're serving. Now, for those of y'all who know Becky Baranowski, you're fortunate. She's absolutely a phenomenal instructor and now a dean at Estrella. And she and I, back in the fall of 2018, recognized we had 11, roughly, institutional learning outcomes. So many that they didn't mean anything. And we had all kinds of problems. And all of a sudden, we were coming to realize HLC had shifted their criteria. And we did nothing to measure program learning outcomes, and we had very little course learning outcomes. We realized there were a lot of problems that we were facing. So we had some really deep reflection conversations on the whiteboard in my office. And the soul of what we were asking revolved around these issues of what does student learning outcomes mean to us as a college? Where do our beliefs about assessing student learning outcomes come from? For me, as a quality manager and that kind of background, I'm always looking at data. And the thing that folks get confused about data, or not data people, is data is not good or bad. Data is data, but we give it meaning. And it's sometimes hard to separate the meaning from the facts themselves. We talked about that and kind of worked through that. And that's a work in progress with our college of trying to get people, welcome, Tom. We were working on folks to understand that data is just a place of learning. We talked a little bit about what activities connect us to assessing student learning. We have regularly scheduled assessment meetings on campus. We did limited levels of student learning outcomes at an institutional level. We had a campus-wide meeting at the beginning of terms to celebrate and talk about assessment and what's going on. And then we started talking about where could we be? And this was the ivory tower philosophical, esoteric conversation, which is my favorite way to talk. Because what we wound up talking about is, could you imagine a time where assessment is as simple as grading an assignment for us? The data collection is the biggest failure on most campuses across the country. Because folks don't know how to collect it. They don't want to have to go into a separate system. IR folks surely get frustrated with having to tabulate 5,000 spreadsheets, which have the student IDs to be able to get the demographics. It was a logistic nightmare. And what used to take me about 4 weeks a semester, I now have down to a couple of hours. And you can do the same thing. That was the solution we tried to come up with one added kicker. We had no budget. All this paid. That's where we were coming from. And that was an esoteric conversation that was pretty exciting for us. Now the reality, we recognize we had very few defined learning outcomes. We had ILOs, but we really had nothing in program and very few in course. That was problematic for a lot of reasons. We lacked substantial participation of faculty and staff. We have limited evidence of the quality improvements based on assessment. These are fundamental core HLC issues. And it's not about HLC. These are just great observations about where we started in 2018. And we have limited evidence about how we use this assessment data as a part of program reviews. People saw assessment as another thing they had to do. They saw program reviews as just another thing they had to do, a checkbox. Part of that esoteric conversation Becky and I had was asking the question of how can we make program reviews relevant? Or dare I say wildly important? Maybe I should. That's another issue. Finally, we talked about limited evidence of continuous improvement across the student populations we serve. We recognized we really didn't have a good way of seeing, is learning consistent across online and in person, across age groups, gender groups, day, evening, residential adjunct, if I dare say that. We realized we had a lot of things we just didn't know. And my video didn't work. Okay. Sorry?
We had video on one slide.
Yeah, didn't work. No, we didn't. It was hilarious. Where was Linda, what's her name? Just like talk amongst yourselves. So politely laugh for the awkward moment. Thank you very much. Hating that happens. So what I want to do is give y'all the chance to kind of take the conversation, and Matt is going to kind of help work with the folks online in this part of the conversation. I want to spend a few minutes just to kind of take a look. And I'm handing out some handouts, which kind of get to some of the conversation points so that it's not just Joe Bob. So what I'd like you to do is to start thinking about what do student learning outcomes mean in your college? And where do your beliefs about assessing student learning outcomes come from? And what activities are you currently doing to feed it? And what else could you be doing?
Tim, this is Liz. Just really quick, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording since it sounds like we're going to do some collaboration. How long did you have? Because I will add then all the virtual participants in a breakout room to discuss.
Let's go ahead and go 10 minutes.
Okay, I'm pausing the recording for now.
Welcome back. Want to have a little sharing, and Matt, I'm going to get you to kind of MC from a virtual perspective. Who would be willing to share a little about what does a student learning outcome mean at your college? Thank you.
So a gateway, what that means for us is just, after an experience, either co-curricularly or curricularly, what a student can know, show, or do proficient level for a student. Know, show, or care about something. So either affective, behavioral, or cognitive.
Matt, how about online?
Hey, from the online perspective, oh, my video is broken, I think. We had a couple discussions about the student learning outcomes. And we have a doc, and I'll put this in the chat so we can all see. And this is the one we're going to be building off of, I think, for each of the discussions for the rest of the day. We had Felicia gave some great insight on how the student learning outcomes. There are some general same 3 sets that are district wide, but then there's also very course specific stuff, and that's we kind of got into the pre and post discussion that you talked about. When we talked about that, it can be very course specific, and I think you noted it in your example, Jim. The CIS is a perfect example. You may have students coming in that have great knowledge on that and don't necessarily need it, and potentially the same on some of the core competencies of English or math, but it is very much course specific, and also the instructor in that class. So, and even within the same discipline, going through a nursing program or something like that, there may be some classes that students already have a proficiency in and some don't. So that measuring tool of before and after is very course specific, was something that came out. Also from Megan, we do have course competencies, but we still have smaller steps or other learning outcomes that lead to that course success. So it's helpful for some faculty to understand those smaller parts. So the stepping stones that get to those final metrics and accomplishments. Those were the things we came up with.
Very cool. How about where did the beliefs, or what are the beliefs that kind of affect assessing learning outcomes? And I know that's kind of an out there kind of question, but I think it's really important because for me, belief is all about process. Or am I getting better at my craft out in the classroom? How about some of y'all? Not sure.
Yeah, I mean, so first, the student learning outcomes, I think are, super important at the college. And they're very, where do they come from? I think you were just saying, like, we want to know that we're getting to the students and getting the teaching what they need and they need it. So we are, we do, so.
What activities are y'all currently using to assess student learning? Anyone? Or if you're not doing anything, you gotta start somewhere. Is there anybody in the online do this? Okay. For us, we have a lot of things going on right now in terms of activities. And what can we do to strengthen? That was the gist of the conversation that Becca and I had in 2018, and it's an ongoing dialogue. So I encourage y'all to kind of think about those and maybe think about those with your assessment committees when you get back to campus. They're a little woo-woo, but I think they're important to get to really where you want to head. Now, the consequences if you don't assess. Right now in this environment in higher education, and I'm going to try to be non-political, funding of public education, they're in a weird dynamic, including financial aid. College accreditation. Once again, we're in a weird dynamic right now, national. And risks of getting an HLC action report request. Another strange dynamic you want to avoid. And assessment is a real big deal within it. But the practical reality is, from an accreditation standpoint, if it isn't documented, it didn't happen. And there are consequences. Which gets me to this core issue I want to talk about today, and kind of where we have evolved as a college and like to as a district, is really assessment is faculty driven. However, it really does take a village. And for us, we've had times with different levels of involvement between administration and IT, HLC liaisons, OPI, which is IR at Estrella, CTL, and SAC, which is our assessment committee. Faculty, they set up learning outcomes in Canvas. They grade, they review the results. Administration, providing support. IT at both the college and district level, providing support. HLC liaisons, they're seeking student learning outcome evidence. Assessment committee, they're providing process to get learning outcomes developed and monitoring what's going on. CTL, doing Canvas setup and maintenance. And IR, we're doing Canvas and SIS integration and dashboarding and all other kinds of fun, nerdy stuff. It takes a lot of players. We're running a little bit long on time in the segment, so I'm just going to fly through this. Think about your stakeholders. And maybe this is some homework. Your assessment committee. What kind of stake do they hold? The Center for Teaching and Learning at your college. Here, they run Canvas. They monitor the Canvas. They do a lot of the upgrades in Canvas. Institutional research. We're real involved with everything we're talking about today. HLC coordinators. Growing interest in this as we're working for our next visit. Administrators, needing students, because they're really the biggest stakeholder, because if they're not learning, why are they here? So the vision of where we tried to go with this, we want to develop student learning outcomes at a program and course level. We already had institutional, but we realized we needed to flesh that out. We wanted to increase faculty and staff participation, and part of that was to remove reasons and excuses sometimes why folks are not assessing. We wanted to build learning outcomes assessment within Canvas making it simply a process of grading an assignment or quiz, something faculty are already doing. Because a lot of times folks complain about, oh, that's just another thing I have to do. Well, you grade anyway, make it work for you. And we want to give the ability to take a look at your data inside a term and across multiple terms. Understand the gaps. Document the results and encourage divisions to use this data as a part of program review, making it a wildly important goal to improve the degree of mastery, percentage X, percentage Y. And to provide a scalable and sustainable solution. I'm going to win the lottery someday. I'm not going to be around to maintain the system. So I wanted to help set it up so that it'll be self-sustaining to a large part. And the good news is it's pretty self-sustaining as long as we're not adding new elements, and it's scalable. You know, it'll take a little coding investment up front. But if you follow our lead, you may be able to do the same for your college. And finally, zero budget. Money's tight. Tighter at some schools than others. Got to figure out a way to save that money. I'm going to kind of click through some points because I'll share the slide deck after the presentation today. Already talked about mastery, why we did that. And again, it is an understandable, digestible thing that you can take a look at a glance and see 87% versus 37%. You don't have to think a lot about it. You know, one is better than the other. Now, one thing I do want to focus a little bit on is this data tends to make people uncomfortable. It takes time to set it up. Regardless of how you're collecting learning outcome data, it takes time. Data is not good or bad. People choose to give it meanings, quite often bad connotations. FERPA, how do you protect an individual's right to privacy? We found some ways to mitigate it with this system so that we don't show data any group less than 5 students. Why 5? Why not? It's a nice number. Recognize not everybody is a data person. Some people thrive on looking at spreadsheets. I'm one of those people. Other people look at a spreadsheet and it's like halibut in a fish market. Just wide open, glassy eyes. They have no idea what they're looking at. You want to make it approachable. Then finally, and most importantly, and this is something I want to be very respectful about, is not everyone wants to share their data. Part of the challenge with this is the technical system. But really what we did is what I call a socio-technical model, where there are technical systems that give you the logistics. Then there are social systems. How do you get people involved to write program learning outcomes? How do you train people on how to score them? Setting up a lot of those components that are the human dynamic. How do you teach people data literacy to understand what mastery means? How do you get people comfortable with this? That's the harder part because it's less concrete. And particularly for folks who are non-data people, it's a real challenge. Now, hesitations. Let's do about 1 minute. Why do people hesitate on assessment? David?
Might think it's too difficult. They might think, like you were saying, there's another system that I have to start inputting thing in. The time commitment, the human resource commitment, that kind of idea. They might be hesitant based on that alone, even started.
They don't feel like it has value, that it's just like checking a box and everything's maybe going into a black hole.
Fair enough. That was probably the greatest part of the conversation Becky and I had, was trying to identify reasons why people don't participate and then mitigating and taking away real reasons and excuses. Because sometimes it was excuses. So I would suggest maybe amongst your college, at some time having these conversations, because if you can't mitigate why people aren't participating, you're not going to get participation at a reasonable level. So where are we now? This is what Estrella has. And I broke it again. I want to be able to demonstrate.
Sure.
Yeah. Actually, I can do it in the system. I want to be able to just look at a web browser.
Oh, okay, you want to do it from your computer?
It doesn't matter. It's just, you know.
To share, okay, you want to share, ready to share it on WebEx?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I share. Perfect, this one, or which one is that?
Let's do that one. Thank you for your patience. This is a live portion of the Estrella website where we're taking a look at institutional learning outcomes, in this case, oral communication.
Internal website or public?
Intra.
I would assume that.
You don't want to let people see how sausage is made. I love sausage. I don't want to watch it made. It's just too ugly to think about. So with this, for Estrella, we have multiple learning outcomes at an institutional level. Sometimes people are asking to see overall, as an institution learning outcomes, how are we doing? This gives us the ability to see counts of at different levels and increments about who's doing what. But maybe I want to take a look at critical thinking, one of my favorites.
Jim, there is a question. Is it possible to add the link to the chat so that us virtually can see it a little bigger or maybe on our own screens?
Let's just copy this link. Yeah, or copy.
Yeah, I can, guys, I can paste that dashboard link in. I'll put it in the chat.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Is that a little better online?
Yeah, it looks better. Thank you.
Now with this, scale is all funny. We have it set up not just wanting to take a look at it at a college level. Maybe I want to see it within my division, my academic org. Having the ability to see counts by academic org. Being able to see within critical thinking just on comprehension. It's drilling down deeper and deeper. Maybe I want to see it comparing falls to falls to falls, because the student population is very different in fall and spring. And then maybe I want to take a look at it from a perspective of age group. Is the learning outcome the same for folks 18 to 24 versus old guys like me? There are possibilities of being able to drill things down. And because I'm working with different resolutions on different monitors, this is a nightmare to demonstrate online, so my apologies. But I'll be glad to show you one-on-one and do a private demo later. This is just taking a look at the counts. But the part I really get a kick out of is the mastering. Plain and simple, it's the same kinds of filters, but you have the ability to see longitudinally the percentage of mastery. And once again, using mastery, I have to measure because that way we get around the issue of scale. So you can see it longitudinally what's going on, and it's pretty tangible with a glance. This is where we've come. This is kind of what we're working with. Our folks seem to like it. Questions and thoughts and reflections. Is this something worthwhile? I hope so. It is for us. Why don't we take a breather? Because I know I've been talking a long time. And let's take a 5-minute break. And we'll start getting into the details from a Canvas perspective. Because the cornerstone of making this work is how you set Canvas up. And I've shared some stuff with some folks in the room to be able to assist with that. And if it's something you want to pursue, I can talk a little bit with your CTL folks about how and why it works.